Hey guys, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I am your host, Devon Harris, and as you know, we work to share insights and ideas that are going to help you to keep on pushing and live your absolute best life. So look, man, if that's something that you're even remotely interested in, guess what? You're in the right place, man, and we have an amazing guest today that I think you're going to find a lot of value in, right? So I think he is one of the most accomplished person that you'll ever meet. So I'm not even sure where to start. Well, you know what? In my mind, he's a crazy guy because he speed ski. I mean, who does that? Well, obviously he does, right? This guy went from being a recreational skier to competing in the medal round of the 1992 Albertville Olympic Games in 4 short years. I mean, that is pretty remarkable. And today, he's one of the most in-demand motivational speakers you'll ever meet. He gets a chance everywhere, anywhere he gets someone wants to listen to him, to share his insights on extraordinary, goal acceleration. Talks to people about being resilient and, overcoming obstacles. And obviously, that's not from reading from a book. That's his life. Those are his experiences, right? He's an award-winning sales and marketing executive with the world's largest real estate investment firm. The guy is an award business owner. He has a master's in organizational management. He is inducted in the Hall of Fame. Actually, he's one of only 4 people or 4 persons on the entire planet inducted into both the Canadian and the USA Speakers Hall of Fame. Is an award with New York Times bestselling author, 7 books. And in his spare time, he finds time to lead or participate so far in 6 expeditions to the Himalayan mountains. So please, I'm so happy to have Vince Poscente on Keep On Pushing with us today. Welcome, Vince.
Devon, it's a treat to be with you. Thanks for bringing me in your show.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you. Now, I have to tell you a story. I want to start with a story about you that you don't know.
Okay.
Go figure. So it's 1997, and I'm in Park City, racing and qualifying for the Nagano Games in Japan, 98, right? And I had intentions of becoming a motivational speaker after the Olympics. So the people I was working with, I was like, hey, after the games, I want to be a motivational speaker. So I'm in my room in Park City, and my agent at the time comes in my room, and he sticks a VHS into the VCR. So, obviously it's 100 years ago. It's old technology, right?
Yeah.
And on the screen is a motivational speaker, some guy called Vince Poscente, on a chair, mimicking the start of a speed ski race. And my agent goes, "Can you do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I could do that." And so I go to the Olympics, and I get back and I started speaking. So yeah, Vince, you've been part and parcel of my speaking career from the beginning. So
that's great.
Awesome.
That's great. That's why we do this.
Yes, indeed. So how did you yourself get started in speaking?
Well, I remember moderating the Christmas play in kindergarten, and I was thinking, "Whoa, this is kind of fun." But anyway, I ended up being a valedictorian for our high school and speaking to, I think, 2,500 people. And I really, for some reason, how there's something burning inside you, you think, I just got to do this. I just got to do this.
Yeah.
And it was not about the attention. It was about a sense of needing to contribute, to give people hope, to give them direction, to say, hey, grab it, make it happen. And then over time, from that speech and graduation speech to probably the Olympic Games, it always kind of stuck in the back of my mind. In fact, I saw a politician speak to 5,000 people in our province of Alberta. His name is Peter Lougheed, and he captivated the audience. And I went, That's it. I want to be a politician. and then, you know, boy, I dodged that bullet. But anyway, so I decided that maybe politics didn't have to be the venue to speak. And then when I was racing, I thought, hey, if I win this gold medal, you know, I could be a speaker. And it turned, I didn't win the gold medal. I mean, it wasn't even remotely possible, it seems, looking back, because I had, you know, people that have been racing since their whole life. So, you know, I ended up being ranked top 10 in the world, but in the finals in the Olympic Games, I placed 15th. And then it was 18 months after that, that I have a saying that a good idea won't go away.
Yeah.
And so the speaking thing kept popping up and popping up. So I eventually poked around, went to the National Speakers Association convention in Washington, D.C. in 1994. 2 years after I competed in the Olympic Games. And that was really the beginning of it, realizing how good professional speakers were. I mean, there's a lot of people that say, hey, I'd like to be a speaker, and maybe they're good at giving toasts at weddings, but I'm telling you, it's to be a professional speaker is a whole deal, as you know.
Yeah. And I get that all the time as well. People go, oh, you're a speaker. How do I get into that, right? And it sounds like, oh, it's a hobby that they want to pick up. They don't recognize, you know, the level of expertise. And on that note, I mean, how do you find as an athlete, right? How do you find a correlation between your athletic career and your speaking in terms of, you know, preparation, the technical stuff, you know, working on your craft, you know, finding sponsors as a speaker, you know, finding as an athlete, finding clients. How are there any correlation, and how does that experience, do you think, impact your other businesses as well?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, I look back over what got me from recreational skier to the Olympics in 4 years is the exact same formula that I used to get into the speaking business. And in a nutshell, it was 5 C's. It was clarify where you want to go, have that emotional connection. When I started, I was not very good. The second C is commitment. We all know what commitment is, because you can say, yeah, I'm in, and you put your money down or you give your word. But it isn't until you get into it you realize the level of commitment necessary. So that didn't surprise me when I got into the speaking business. In fact, at that National Speakers Association convention, there was 2,000 people there, and one guy got on stage and he said, in this business, there's no competition. We can all do this. And I looked around and went, heck yeah, there's competition. Just look around. And so to raise your level of commitment's necessary. Consistency is something I learned from sport. You know, a lot of athletes and people in business, for that matter, try to do what the competition's not doing. But I found that when you do what the competition's not willing to do, it's a game changer. And what I learned in sport, in order to compete for Canada or the United States or other countries for that matter, there's Olympic qualifying standards. And so in Canada, it's you have to be either top half or top 16 in the world. So I figured that I had to not do what the top 16 in the world were not doing. That's impossible. They've been racing since they're 4 or 5 years old, but I could do what they're not willing to do. Precisely. And so in the speaking business, did the same thing. I looked at the top speakers and what are they not willing to do? You do do that consistently, that's a game changer. Yeah. And then the 4th C is confidence. You know, if you're not confident in sport, you're not going to do, no matter what skill level you have. If you don't have that level of confidence, you know that, and if you stand on a platform, you got to have a whole bunch of confidence. Yeah. And the 5th C is control. And as an athlete or a speaker, I realized you can't control the environment. You can't control the audience. Or in sport, you can't control what you're stepping into, but you can control what you bring to that, meaning the routines prior to any race run. So those 5 C's really overlaid. And then I did the same thing in writing books. It ended up on the New York Times bestselling list for that reason. I mean, clarify, commit, consistency, confidence, and control. Yeah. And obviously it has worked. And the important point here, our lesson here, I think for all of us, is that these 5 C's aren't just a one-time thing. It's an ongoing thing, right? You clarify your vision, but that vision
keeps you and pulls you and gets you to go. Commitment is not just, okay, I'm committing. You literally have to commit every single day to that vision that you have clarified. And as you do that consistently, obviously you raise your confidence level, and that allows you to control, as you say, what you bring to the table. So awesome. So I guess I have to ask you, man, are you an adrenaline junkie? I mean, I read that you hand glided, you skydived, you swum with the sharks. I mean, apart from the fact that you get a rush of adrenaline when you do these things, are there any other similarities? And again, I'm always curious about the lessons that we can take from our respective experiences and apply to other areas of life.
Yeah, I guess Devon, the optics of it are, I'm a daredevil or an adrenaline junkie, but the truth is, what really drives me is if there's something that causes fear, I want to supersede that. There's no better feeling for me to supersede fear. And so it doesn't have to be a speed thing or an adrenaline thing. It could be, I could see somebody I want to talk to at a cocktail party or a meeting or something. I'll go, oh, shoot, maybe they're too busy or whatever. And I went, wait, that's fear. And fear, I hate fear. Fear drives me bananas. So to supersede it, to become bigger than the fear is something that's what drives me. That's what I get turned on by, is to overcome fear.
Yes, that makes absolute sense. They say, do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. So as you take your fear head on, as it were, you gain control over it. So I also read that you were a luger at one point. You used to go down essentially a bobsled track, sticking your feet out at 80 miles an hour. I mean, How did that start? How did you then transition from that to speed skiing?
Well, the luge I did for a couple of years, but I quit. And I luged over in Lake Placid. Have you ever bobsledded in Lake Placid? I'm sure you have. Yeah. So
on the old track.
On the old track, yeah, me too. It's that was. You're still alive. That's a good thing.
We survived. We belong to a very elite club.
Yes. Oh goodness. Well, luge, I learned about visualization and imagery, but I also learned that if you don't commit, if you don't really step into something that's not guaranteed. And again, it was that fear thing, I guess, overall. I quit luge and I watched buddies of mine marching in the opening ceremonies in Calgary. Yeah. And I went, you know what? That's never going to happen again. I am never going to have that feeling of the regret that I did at least try.
Got you. I think I read that you allowed your coach to dissuade you from continuing luge. He said you weren't going to be good enough, you wouldn't make it, so you believed him. And so you got a good taste of that pain of regret.
When you can get an outside voice that says it's not going to happen, and then you go, oh well, you're an authority, you would know, and I'll believe you. Well, we hear countless stories of people that says that may even be a motivation for some people. For me, I was like, oh yeah, okay, good point. But that regret is something I'm never going to have happen again, ever.
It's one of those, so, people get motivated by a number of different things. I think one of them is, having an experience that you never want to experience again, or an event that you never want to experience again. And, kudos to you, because there are people who, I think all of us have regrets of one kind or another. And then people will go, man, I wish I'd, invested in that stock, or taken that job, or not taking that job. I wish I'd asked her to marry me, or gone out on a date, or that kind of stuff, right? And it doesn't work out all that well, and people, beat themselves up, but kudos to you. I think you, instead of kind of, focus inwardly, you focus outwardly and decide to take action and moved on, right? So that's commendable. So it's 1988, February 1988 to be exact, and you're home watching TV, or do you say telly in Canada? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Those are my British friends, right? You're watching the opening sermons on TV, and you're watching these four Jamaican guys, these misfits, walking the opening ceremonies. You're watching Eddie the Eagle marching with the British team. And perhaps worst of all, though, you're watching your friends.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, well, I mean, what were you thinking then?
Well, Devon, the truth be known, I had a ticket for the opening ceremonies, and I lived in Calgary. So I was in the stands with a glove on, holding a ticket, watching these buddies of mine march in the opening ceremony. You know what? I'm not saying I know I would have made the luge team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't know.
Yeah.
That's that feeling, you know.
You can't know unless you tried, but then, you know, you got the coach to convince you not to.
Yeah, and also I was scared. I had a more guaranteed path. Everything, you know, there's one guaranteed path, and then your heart can lead you. And I think one of the lessons I need to learn in life is to follow my heart more and less about what makes sense. You know, because some stuff makes sense, but this is what drives us. And I hope this is correlating to people listening to this or watching this, is that that you have a sense of that an intuition, or what I call the emotional buzz. And the emotional buzz is based on when a thought creates a physical reaction. And there's actually science behind this. There was a study done by a guy named Dr. Lee Poulos. I first heard it through him. And he said, in a second of time, your conscious mind processes with 2,000 neurons. But in the same second, your subconscious mind, below consciousness, is processing with 4 billion neurons. So 2,000 conscious, 4 billion subconscious. So who's in control, right? The subconscious mind. Yet, with our conscious mind, we can say, hey, I want to go in a direction, but the subconscious mind might say, I'm going in a different direction. And that's actually why here it is. I wrote a book called The Ant and the Elephant. The ant is the metaphor for the conscious mind. The elephant is the metaphor for the subconscious mind. How do you align a conscious intention and the subconscious agenda? How do you get from where you are today to where you want to go? And that's what this book's about, and that's what life's about. How do we get to this oasis, this place that we have an emotional buzz about? And so that's really, truly a substantial way to be able to create better results in your life.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. You mentioned the guaranteed path, and I think all of us, you know, come to that crossroads in our lives, I think, where there's this kind of guaranteed path that makes, you know, like total sense, and then there's this other part that is being led by your heart, right? And your conscious mind is saying, I really want to go over here. I'm not so sure. And your subconscious mind, which is even more powerful and conditioned to go along the guaranteed path because it's meant to keep you safe. And a lot of us, unfortunately, kind of follow that guaranteed, you know, known path, as opposed to following our mind and getting our conscious mind to tell our subconscious mind to align because we're going in this direction. And I think when we do that, as I said, follow your heart, some amazing things happen. It's not that, you know, going down the guaranteed path wouldn't have been good, but I have found from my own experiences that, you know, veering off into the weeds, because that's where my heart leads or compels me to go, create some amazing experiences, right? And I think that might be part and parcel, I think, in this idea of self-mastery, life mastery, which you teach a lot.
Yeah, the life mastery piece is being able to really understand how you can, you know, can continue moving forward and not have regrets at the same time. It's like it's the yin and yang of being able to go in the right direction, being able to say, hey, I've got a path that I'd love to be able to go on. In the same breath, I have security and safety that's necessary. You want to feel safe. Yet there can be, it's so much more consumable. I call it the mathematics of opportunity. And I say, just open a door. Because when you open a door, you look in and you go, oh, there's another door. So you could choose, well, why don't I look at that door? And then you just keep opening in doors until you go, wait a minute, this is a great place to be. Or I think we're in a society of instant gratification, and we want to get results quicker. And you'll hear a story like this: recreational skier to Olympian in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? That was a long 4 years. That was really hard.
Yes.
It was uphill the whole time, and you pace yourself. I mean, it's life. I mean, either you just sit in the sofa and watch Netflix and binge until you run out of popcorn, or you get off the sofa and you say, what's on the other side of that door?
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. So the yin and the yang, and of kind of following our desires, or the direction that our heart is pulling us in or pushing us in, versus this kind of guaranteed path that we're all conditioned to follow, right? And those are some of the similarities in our stories, because you go from having a successful real estate career to kind of dropping it to go chase this harebrained idea of being an Olympic skier in 4 years from so how did that, talk me through that, your kind of your thought process. I mean, it was a big risk. Why did you take it? How were you able to pull it off?
Devon, one story I don't really share that often because it complicates the elegance of a keynote. It was the opening ceremonies in Calgary where the sting of regret was most intense.
Yes.
But there's this notion that we make decisions like this blinding flash of brilliance, or this epiphany, this Hollywood version of, I know the direction I need to go, and that it doesn't happen that way with the human condition. Big decisions take time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was months after I actually ended up going to the Olympics in Seoul, and I was going to assist the Athletes Commission for the IOC. And that I had more off time than I did helping them out. So I ended up going to the Taekwondo event in Seoul. And the ticket lasted 8 hours. So I went when the doors opened and realized this was going to go all day. And so I'm sitting in a dark, remote part of this stadium, and there's not many people around. And athlete after athlete after athlete was stepping out onto the mat. And that was a time when Taekwondo was a demonstration sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew in the back of my brain, speed skiing was a demonstration sport in the Olympics in Albertville in 3.5 years later.
Yeah.
And I just realized, you know what? You have to try. You have to engage. And you get to these moments of truth where you say, I must make a decision. And of course there was fear. It was so unrealistic to try and get to the Olympics. I'd never ski raced before. I knew nothing about ski racing. I was a recreational skier. And yet there was two things that really can help you when you make a decision like this. One was you just take a step and see what happens. Open that door, see what happens. The second piece is have fun. I'm not going to do this if this is not fun. I mean, that was one decision I made very early on at 26 years old. I'm not going to do this unless it's fun. And so making it fun and then looking at the next step, it all came together. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, and then do what the competition's not willing to do. That was a great way to be able to start to do things like mental training and biofeedback and sensory deprivation, float tanks, and over 2 hours a day of mental training, things that other athletes just weren't willing to do. So
talk about, leaving the comfort zone of your career, and starting out, embarking on this journey to the Olympics, and the fear of all that entails, right? And then obviously doing something that the competition wasn't willing to do, like strapping yourself on top of a vehicle.
Right.
So, if there is, talk about innovative thinking. A lot of times when I speak to kids, I show them how we trained in Jamaica. I often say, hey, remember that God gives you a brain and you're supposed to use it to think. And if you have a goal, as impossible as it might seem, if you really start to dial back and think about all the resources that you have at your disposal, you can find a way to make some incremental, progress, and even stepping outside the box a little bit, like as you did to get on top of a car.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well,
I mean,
I did try to get into it.
Physically being on top of the car, but how did you arrive at that conclusion that, hey, you know what? In order for me to train and have a chance to get a sense of what it feels like going down the side of a mountain, I need to get on top of a car.
Well, I tried to get in a wind tunnel and couldn't find one to get into early on, at least. And so when you hit a roadblock, you don't quit. You go, well, what else could I do that would be? And then a buddy of mine was a race car driver, and he says, I care more about you scratching the top of my car than you falling off my car. So we made sure I didn't scratch his car. But the idea to get on top of this car and go to a remote part of just outside of Calgary, and it was highly illegal. I mean,
it had to be.
Yeah. But anyway, and to a degree it was dangerous, but I did have a rope strapped to, we used something called a kicker harness that climbers use.
Yeah.
And there's a ring on either side of the kicker harness. So ran a rope from one ring through the windows of the car to the other ring, and then cinched it up so that if I did pop off, we would just flop until they slowed down.
Yeah. Well, I always say, hey, when it comes to taking a risk and overcoming your fears, one of the things that you have to assess early on is like, hey, if things go badly, as like the worst case scenario, are you willing to live with the consequences?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, if you're investing in a business or you're switching cities because you need to change jobs or career and things go badly, can you live with the consequences? If you can, then it's a risk worth taking, right? Because it's not just about blindly and unintelligently taking risk. And obviously, you took precautions, and I have to believe that somewhere in the back of your mind, you were willing to live or not live with the risk, with the worst consequences.
Yeah, no, I've from a very early age, I've been a person that has thrived on minimizing risk. Mm-hmm. And the safety industry is an industry that I work with quite a bit because, they want everybody to be safe, and they give them a stack of procedure manuals. But what really works is the neuroscience of safety, of being able to humanize the environment that they're in and say, hey, I want to go home to my family tonight. And so that's moving people forward and embracing it that way. So it really is being able to have an emotional connection to where you want to go and minimizing risk at the same time. And absolute magic happens when you combine those two things.
I agree. Let's stay on the subject of fear for a bit, Vince. So, I tell people all the time, I'm a 3-time Olympic bobsledder. I've driven sleds in 2 Olympics. I am not necessarily a fan of speed and height. And so it's kind of hard sometimes to make those correlations. But I certainly can remember the times when I'm racing and I would get to the start line and the fear begins to creep in. Wow, you might crash, or and of course, and I kind of see it as this other voice that I tell to shut up, right? How do you deal with those moments, and
right?
How does dealing with fear in your skiing career, does that, you see, impacting or affecting other areas of your life?
Yeah, huge. All right, so I'm going to give you a technique that is phenomenal. I mean, and it's a 2-part technique. One, you have to really have an emotional buzz of what you want to accomplish or where you want to go. It could be, having a cottage by the lake with no mortgage and hosting a family reunion there. Yeah. In this Olympic story, it was marching in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. The New York Times best-selling book, it was being able to have, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people reading this book and being transformed. So I had an emotional connection to that goal. Now, once you have your emotional buzz, then anytime something that causes fear, or let's just call it negativity, right? Yeah. Anytime there's negativity, ask yourself this: is this taking me closer to that emotional buzz or further away? Mm-hmm. So if it's a comment somebody makes, if it's an internal dialogue that's going off that's saying, hey, you know, wait a minute, you know, you got to be safe, can't do this. Or if it's taking you closer to that, then great. It's a good fear, or it's something that's going to serve you. But if it's taking you further away from that, then your ant and elephant, your conscious and subconscious mind, have a conversation quietly, internally, and they say, thank you. The ant says to the elephant, thank you. That's not part of my vision. That's not part of my clarity of where I want to go. Mm-hmm. Where I want to go is, and then you go back to the emotional buzz. So you basically acknowledge the subconscious mind for throwing that thought, that fear out to you. Mm-hmm. And then you acknowledge it, and then you say, you pivot from that fear to, but what I really want to end up is that cottage that's mortgage-free with a family reunion, or the New York Times bestseller, or marching in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, whatever that emotional buzz is for you. And then, well, I guess it's 3 parts, and then you go through the 5 senses. What does it look like, smell like, taste like? You have an experience of all 5 senses and the emotion that's attached to that, which would be satisfaction or joy or gratitude, you know? And so if you have an experience of what that is, you've completely eliminated that you've interrupted that negativity and pivoted onto where you want to go.
Yeah, and so you made you made a strong emotional connection with where you want to go. That's kind of where your thoughts will eventually start centering on, and you'll get there. Speak to me a little bit, Vince, about what I'm going to call your less philosophy. You speak about fearless and selfless. Speak to me about that a little bit.
Well, okay, so that all came from after the Olympic Games and the speaking business and all that. Of course, I'm like anybody, I'm a curious guy. And in 2006, a guy invited me to climb a mountain in the Himalayas. And I said, I have never climbed a mountain. And he says, you know, it's a piece of cake. We'll do it together. Sure enough, it was, we climbed a mountain. We summited a mountain that's called Chakri Peak. Had never been climbed before. We touched the top of this mountain. And over time, I went back to the Himalayas and then back again. And I created something called the Hero's Climb, which is, there are 5 qualities of heroes. And I'm not talking about the iconic heroes that we all have, like Gandhi, or there's the celebrity heroes, let's say Sully, who landed a passenger jet in the Hudson River. Mm-hmm. Those are heroes as well. You could have sport heroes. You know, I'm a Canadian. Wayne Gretzky would be a sport hero. But what I'm talking about are everyday heroes. These are people that, by their example, elevate the rest of us. In fact, there's a saying, when the tide rises, all ships rise.
Yeah, all boats rise. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all boats rise. So to be able to be around people that elevate us through their character, these everyday heroes. And so I had people nominate their heroes so that we would go back to the Himalayas, climb a mountain that had no name, and name that mountain after the everyday hero. Mm-hmm. And so the 5 qualities are they're compassionate, selfless, fearless, humble, and persistent. And couldn't we all be more compassionate? Could we all be more selfless and have less fear? And so, and to be more humble and then and persistent as well. Yeah. Goodness gracious, that would be a phenomenal life lived. Indeed. If you had all those 5 characters.
And imagine the number of people you would have impacted as well along the way.
Yeah, yeah. So to live those character traits, I'm not calling myself a hero at all. In fact, I'm constantly looking for people to draw inspiration from. Yeah. And we named the mountain after a guy named David Nash, who we call it Mash Mountain, and he broke his neck playing football in high school and went on to be, you know, an entrepreneur, a dad, a great husband, and I've met him a few times. He's a phenomenal individual, and his example is inspiring. We named another mountain after a young girl named Hannah France. And Hannah was adopted out of Korea. Kids were pulling out her hair. She had deformities on her hand. Her hands are deformed, but she went on to be a scholarly young lady. I mean, she's so inspirational. And then most recently, we named a mountain after a young man that has overcome leukemia. So we've been able. Oops, my phone's ringing. I got to turn this off. All right, that's okay. I'll leave it over there.
No, so that's amazing. So we're wrapping up here. So you're charging down a mountain. You're heading down the side of a hill, and you're flying towards the speed trap. You're about 100 miles an hour. You're focused. You're trying to stay stable. You don't want to catch an edge, because if you do, you're going to end up like that guy in that promo for ABC Wild World of Sport. You're going to be experiencing the agony of defeat.
Right. Remember that.
Beside there, right? We all live in, and you wrote about the age of speed. So that's the world we live in today. You lived in the age of speed, going down the side of a mountain. We all are living today. Everything is moving faster than the speed of light today. How do we stay stable, Vince? How do we resist catching that edge?
Yeah. Well, I think you can relate to this as a bobsled driver. The second you become overwhelmed by the speed is the second you lose control. And so the question is, how do you not become overwhelmed? And it has everything to do with being present and fearless at the same time. And being fearless, we're all going to have fear, but to just fear less as we move forward. And being present means you're not afraid of anything that happened in the past. You're not afraid of anything that will happen in the future. And so to have those two things happen at the same time means that you're going to be able to be happy now. I went through a period of time where I was just really not happy. I was, and I don't know if you experienced it after the Olympics. It's a bit of feeling lost.
Yeah.
And then I just made a decision to be happy now, just right now. Be happy now, be happy now. And that made such a massive, massive difference. And then we have to, today in the age of speed, we have to take more responsibility for technology. Meaning, you've got an iPhone. No, well, it interrupted me while I was on this interview with you, right? I mean, frequent email interruptions reduce your IQ 2.5 times greater than the drop in IQ from smoking marijuana. I mean, you're better off buying a bong than buying an iPhone. And so, these interruptions, if we allow it to interrupt us, then we're not taking that stewardship for our time. And that's another piece. It's just a process, right? You just got to keep seeing, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? How can I make that better? So you'll get there.
Yeah, no, it's amazing and it's enlightening. It's been, such an honor, man, to be hanging out with you, my fellow Olympian from Albertville, 1992.
Yes.
A guy who I looked at and go, yeah, I could do that. I'm not gonna stand on a chair on stage, but I drew inspiration from you. People ask me all the time, hey, so who inspires you? And it's everybody. I try to draw inspiration and knowledge from everybody. And so it's such an honor to have you here and Keep On Pushing, because again, I think you've been able to share some insights and some ideas that are going to help, our listeners get to the next level in their lives. So Vince,
I hope we all do that. I hope we can help each other.
Indeed. And so I'm only a phone call away if you ever need a bobsled, and not to go down a ski run. That's not going to happen. I'll tell you that now, but perhaps anything else. It's all good.
Devon, you're a good man, and thanks for putting on this podcast. It's good work, and you're making a difference one podcast at a time. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget Share it with your friends, man. They want to be inspired as well, right? So share it. Don't keep it. And before you go on to the next video, visit my website, www.devonharris.com. Keep on pushing.